station was never quiet. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds moved through its corridors at all hours, trading goods, sharing news, and forming the connections that kept galactic civilization running. The station hung in neutral space, belonging to no single species, which made it perfect for commerce and terrible for anyone who wanted peace. Had stopped looking for peace years ago. She sat alone at a small table in the station's main cafeteria, her meal untouched before her. Around her, groups of traders laughed and argued. Families shared food. Friends made plans. She watched none of it. Her silvery skin caught the overhead lights, and her luminescent eyes stayed fixed on a point somewhere beyond the walls. She was, and among her people she was nothing. They had built their entire civilization around lineage and continuation. Children were sacred. Mothers were honored above all others. The ability to bring new life into the world was considered the highest gift anyone could possess. Those who could not bear children were seen as broken vessels, empty of purpose, unworthy of respect or love. Had learned she was barren at the age of 23, a rare genetic condition the doctors told her. Nothing could be done. In that single moment, her entire future had collapsed. Her engagement was canceled within days. Her family, their support for her education. Friends she had known since childhood stopped answering her messages. She had become invisible to her own people. Now she worked as a data archivist on station, organizing records for a trade consortium that needed her skills but not her presence. She lived in the lowest tier of quarters, ate alone, and spoke to almost no one. The other on the station knew what she was. They crossed to the other side of corridors when they saw her coming. They pretended not to hear when she spoke. She had grown used to it. That was the saddest part. Daniel Carter noticed her on his third day back at the station. He was a cargo pilot, human, early 30s, with brown hair that never stayed flat and eyes that noticed things most people missed. He ran supply routes between a dozen stations in this sector, carrying everything from medical supplies to agricultural equipment. It was honest work, and it let him see the galaxy without getting shot at, which suited him fine. He had stopped in the cafeteria for a late dinner after finishing his post-flight checks. The place was crowded, but one table had plenty of empty seats. A silver-skinned woman sat there alone, staring at nothing while her food grew cold. Daniel grabbed his tray and walked over. Looked up when he stopped beside her table. Her expression showed confusion, then suspicion, then something that might have been fear. No one approached her. No one ever approached her. Daniel smiled. "Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is packed." She stared at him for a long moment. He was human. Humans were still relatively new to this part of space, still learning the unwritten rules that governed interactions between species. Maybe he did not know what she was. Maybe he had not yet learned to recognize the marks of her shame. "If you wish," she said quietly. He sat down across from her and started eating. For a while, he said nothing, just focused on his meal. Watched him carefully, waiting for the moment when someone would come and whisper in his ear, when his face would change, and he would make some excuse to leave. Instead, he looked up and said, "I'm Daniel Carter. I fly cargo for shipping." She replied after a pause, "I work in data archives." "Archives, huh? That sounds interesting. You get to see all kinds of old records and documents." Blinked. No one had asked about her work in years. "Sometimes. Mostly I organize trade manifests and shipping logs. It is not very exciting." "Still sounds better than my job. I spent 14 hours today staring at the same stars while my ship flew itself. At least you get to read things." She did not know how to respond to that. He seemed genuinely interested in talking to her, not mocking her, not setting up some cruel joke, just talking the way people did with other people they considered worth knowing. They spoke for almost an hour. He told her about his routes, the strange things he had seen on distant stations, the time his navigation system had malfunctioned and sent him 3 light years off course. She found herself sharing small details about her work, about the oldest documents in the archives, about a record she had found from the first contact between thee and the centuries ago. Daniel listened like everything she said mattered. When he finally stood to leave, he picked up his tray and paused. Same time tomorrow. The food here is terrible, but the company was good. Felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. I am here most evenings, she said, and her voice was steadier than she expected. Then I'll see you tomorrow. He smiled again and walked away. She watched him go, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for him to look back and laugh, waiting for the moment when she would understand this was just another form of cruelty. He did not look back. He just left as if this had been a normal conversation between two normal people. The next evening arrived at the cafeteria at her usual time. She told herself she was not looking for anyone. She told herself it did not matter if he showed up or not. She had survived years of loneliness. One pleasant conversation meant nothing. But when she saw Daniel walking toward her table with his tray, something warm spread through her chest, something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Told you I'd be back, he said, sitting down across from her. Now tell me more about those old first contact records. That sounded fascinating. Looked at this strange human who had no idea what he was doing. He did not know that every in this cafeteria was watching them with disgust. He did not know that sitting with her was marking him as either ignorant or foolish. He did not know that she was supposed to be invisible. Or maybe he did know. Maybe he simply did not care. For the first time in years, smiled. It was small and uncertain, like a plant pushing through cracked stone, but it was real. Where would you like me to start? She asked. Daniel leaned forward with genuine interest. The beginning. I want to hear all of it. And so she told him, and he listened, and for one evening felt like she might actually be someone worth knowing after all. 3 months passed, and Daniel Carter became the most consistent presence in his life. He found her before each flight for morning coffee in the small shop near the docking bays. He sought her out when he returned, sometimes tired from long hauls but always ready to sit and talk. He brought her small gifts from the worlds he visited. A blue stone from Prime, a book of poetry from the human colony on New Geneva, a pressed flower sealed in clear resin from a planet whose name she could not pronounce. Each gift confused her more than the last. The on-station watched this strange courtship with growing disapproval, saw them whispering when she and Daniel walked through the corridors together. She heard the words they thought she could not hear. Empty, broken, wasted attention. What does he want from her? She asked herself the same question every night. One evening, Daniel arrived at dinner late. His expression was thoughtful, and he sat down without his usual easy smile. Something happened today, he said. Felt her stomach tighten. What is it? One of the elders approached me. He asked to speak with me privately. She knew. He was one of the most respected on the station, a male who had fathered 11 children and held considerable influence in trade negotiations. The fact that he had taken notice of Daniel meant her quiet shame was becoming a public matter. What did he say? Daniel met her eyes. He told me you were empty, that pursuing you would damage my reputation among your people. He suggested I find better uses for my time. The words hit her like physical blows, even though she had heard worse, even though she had called herself worse in the darkness of her quarters late at night. I see, she said quietly, and what did you tell him? I told him I don't care about breeding politics. I told him I like spending time with you because you're smart and funny and good company. I told him that where I come from, people choose their friends and partners based on who they are, not what they can produce. Stared at him. You said that too. Was I not supposed to? A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It sounded strange to her own ears, rusty from disuse. He must have been furious. He seemed more confused than anything, like he couldn't understand what I was saying. Daniel shrugged. Honestly, I don't understand his way of thinking either, so I guess we're even. Looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. Daniel, you do not know what you are involving yourself in. Among my people, I am considered less than nothing. Being seen with me will cost you. It already has, I am certain. Trade partners will distance themselves. Doors will close. Then I'll find other doors. His voice was calm, certain. I'm not here because I don't understand the situation. I'm here because I do understand, and I think the whole thing is ridiculous. You're not broken. You're not empty. You're a person, and a good one. The fact that your people can't see that is their failure, not yours. She could not speak. Her throat had closed around words that refused to form. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. His skin was warm against her cooler silver fingers. Can I tell you something about my family? She nodded, not trusting her voice. My mother couldn't have children naturally, some medical complication when she was young. She and my father adopted me when I was 2 days old. I grew up knowing I wasn't their biological child, and you know what? It never mattered. Not once. They loved me. They raised me. They were my family in every way that counted. He squeezed her hand gently. Where I come from, family isn't about blood or genetics or who can produce what. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who cares, that's it. Everything else is just biology. Felt tears sliding down her cheeks, silver trails on silver skin. She had not cried in years. She had taught herself not to, because crying changed nothing and only made the loneliness harder to bear. I don't understand you, she whispered. I don't understand why you're doing this. Because I like you, because you're worth knowing, because spending time with you makes my days better. He smiled, and it was the most genuine thing she had ever seen. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. She had spent years believing she had nothing to offer anyone. Her culture had taught her that her only value lay in her ability to continue a lineage, and without that ability, she was worthless. She had accepted this truth so completely that it had become the foundation of her entire identity. Now this human was trying to pull that foundation out from under her, and she did not know whether to be terrified or grateful. I wanted to be she said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them, before my diagnosis. I wanted to study the ancient connections between species, the first meetings, the ways different civilizations learned to understand each other. I had been accepted to one of the best programs on Prime. What happened? My family, their support. They said there was no point in educating someone who would contribute nothing to the future. They wanted me to accept a position in basic administrative work and remain quiet about my condition. Daniel's expression hardened with an anger that surprised her. That's cruel. It is simply how things are done. That doesn't make it right. He leaned forward. Do you still want to study? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her what she wanted in years. Yes, I think about it sometimes. The work I do in the archives touches on it. I find old documents and I wonder about the stories behind them. But it's foolish to dream about things that cannot happen. Why can't it happen? I have no support, no funding, no connections. I am an outcast working a low-level job on a trading station. Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, I go to a lot of different places. Human colonies, alien worlds, remote stations with libraries and universities and research centers. What if I started looking for study materials? Distance learning programs. There has to be a way for you to continue your education, even from here. Shook her head. You would do that for me. I do a lot more than that for you. He said it simply, without drama or expectation, just a statement of fact. She looked at this human who had walked into her life and refused to accept the rules she had lived by for so long. He was offering her something she had stopped believing in. A future, a possibility, a reason to hope. Slowly, carefully, she turned her hand in his and intertwined their fingers. Thank you, she said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. Daniel smiled and held her hand a little. You never have to thank me for treating you like you deserve to be treated. That should just be standard. They sat together in the crowded cafeteria, two people from different worlds, holding hands while dozens of watched with disapproval, found that she did not care about their stares anymore. For the first time in her life, she had found someone who saw her as complete, and that changed everything. The news spread across station like fire through dry grass. The human cargo pilot and the Barren archivist were not just spending time together. They were in a genuine relationship. They had been seen holding hands. They had been seen laughing together in public spaces. They had been seen looking at each other the way people looked at those they loved. For the community on the station, this was a scandal beyond measure. Daniel noticed the changes immediately. Trade partners who had always been friendly suddenly found reasons to cancel contracts. His docking fees increased without explanation. Vendors who had sold him supplies for years started claiming they had nothing in stock. A customs official found problems with paperwork that had been accepted 100 times before. He reported all of this with more amusement than concern. They're really committed to making my life difficult, he said one evening. I have to admire the coordination. Did not share his humor. She saw what was happening and she blamed herself. You should distance yourself from me. Find a way to repair these relationships before the damage becomes permanent. Not a chance. Daniel, please, this is your livelihood, your business. You cannot sacrifice everything because of me. He took her face in his hands, gently tilting her head until she met his eyes. Listen to me. I have been flying cargo routes for 10 years. I have backup contacts. I have other stations I can work from. I have options. What I don't have and what I refuse to give up is you. So stop trying to protect me from consequences I've already accepted. She wanted to argue. She wanted to push him away for his own good. But she was tired of being alone, and he was so warm and so certain, and she could not make herself let go. The arrival of the transport from Prime brought new complications. Learned about it from the station's public announcements and felt her heart freeze in her chest. She knew who would be on that ship before she saw the passenger manifest. Found her in the archives the next day. Sister stood in the doorway, tall and elegant in flowing robes that marked her status as a mother of 4. Her silver skin was identical to's, but everything else about her spoke of the life had lost. Confidence, belonging, worth. Sister said. The word sounded strange, as if she had to remind herself of its meaning. Rose from her workstation. I did not expect to see you here. No, I imagine you did not. Stepped inside and looked around the small archive room with barely concealed distaste. This is where you work now. Yes. I see. Was silent for a moment. Then she reached into her robe and a sealed document. I come bearing a message from the family. Did not move to take it. What does it say? You know what it says. You know why I am here. His voice softened slightly. They are offering you a path back. End this relationship with the human. Return to Prime. Undergo the ritual of renewed purpose. The family will accept you back in a limited capacity. You would have a place again, a home. The ritual of renewed purpose. Knew what that meant. A public ceremony where she would acknowledge her deficiency and pledge to serve the community in other ways. Cooking and cleaning for mothers. Caring for children she could never have. Living as a permanent servant to those deemed more worthy than herself. And if I refuse? His expression hardened. Then you remain as you are, an outcast, a disgrace, cut off from everyone who ever loved you. I have been cut off for years already. This would be permanent, final. There would be no future offers of reconciliation. Looked at her sister, searching for some trace of the girl she had grown up with. They had been close once, before the diagnosis, before everything changed. Had been the first to stop speaking to her after the news spread. That betrayal had hurt more than all the others combined. I need time to consider, said. You have 3 days. Place the document on a nearby shelf. Read the full terms, think carefully, and remember that this human cannot give you what family can. She left without another word. Daniel found in her quarters that evening. She had not answered his messages, and he had worried enough to come looking for her. She sat on her narrow bed, the sealed document unopened beside her. She told him everything, the offer, the ritual, the finality of the choice before her. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat down beside her and took her hand. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to refuse immediately. Part of me. She closed her eyes. They are my family, Daniel, despite everything. I remember my mother's voice singing me to sleep, my father teaching me to read the old texts, family gatherings where I felt like I belonged. Those memories are real, even if everything after became painful. Of course they're real, and it's natural to miss what you lost. If I refuse this offer, I lose any chance of getting it back. Ever. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I won't tell you what to decide. This is your life, your family, your choice. But I want you to know something. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. If you decide to go back to Prime and try to rebuild those relationships, I won't stand in your way. I'll hate losing you, but I won't be the reason you lose your family entirely. Opened her eyes and looked at him. You would let me go. If that's what you needed, if that's what would make you happy. His voice was steady, but she could see the pain beneath his words. Your happiness matters more to me than keeping you close. She thought about what he was offering: freedom, choice, love without conditions or demands. It was everything her own people had her. Returned 2 days later, seeking her answer. Met her in a public area of the station, with Daniel standing quietly nearby. I have made my decision, said. And I refuse. His face went blank with shock. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. I will not return to Prime. I will not undergo the ritual. I will not spend the rest of my life apologizing for something I cannot control. For him, his voice rose with disbelief. You are throwing away your entire heritage for a human. I am choosing a life where I am seen as whole, where my worth is not measured by my ability to bear children, where someone loves me for who I am, not what I can produce. His voice did not waver. For years I believed I was broken. He showed me that was a lie. I will not go back to believing it again. Stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes that might have been sadness or might have been envy. Then this is goodbye, sister, permanently. I know. Turned and walked away. She did not look back. Watched her go, and she felt the final door to her old life close forever. The grief hit her then, overwhelming and sharp. She had loved her family. She still loved them, and now they were gone. Daniel's arms wrapped around her from behind. He held her while she cried, saying nothing, offering no empty words of comfort, just his presence, just his warmth, just his steady certainty that she had made the right choice. When her tears finally stopped, she turned in his arms and pressed her face against his chest. I have nothing now, she whispered. No family, no people, nothing but you. Daniel held her. Then we'll build something new together, something better. She believed him. Against all reason, against all her years of expecting the worst, she believed him. And that belief would carry her into whatever came next. 18 months had changed everything. Stood at the window of their small apartment on Haven's Rest Station, watching ships come and go from the docking bays below. The station was smaller then, with a human majority population and a quieter pace of life. It had become home in ways she never expected. Behind her, Daniel was reviewing cargo manifests for his shipping company. It was modest, just 3 pilots including himself, but it was growing. He had built it from nothing after leaving, finding new partners and new routes far from influence. She had changed, too. On her desk sat filled with coursework from a human university's distance learning program. After 2 years of study, she was close to completing her degree in. The dream she had abandoned was finally becoming real. The door chime sounded. Daniel looked up from his work, expecting anyone. No, moved to the door panel and checked the external camera. She froze. A young female stood outside. She was thin, with the same silver skin and luminescent eyes but her posture spoke of exhaustion and defeat. Her clothes were plain and worn. She looked like she had been traveling for a long time. "Open the door. Can I help you?" The young woman's eyes widened. "You are the one who—" "Who what?" "The one who found happiness with a human, the one who refused to go back." Her voice trembled. "My name is— I traveled very far to find you. I heard stories about you on Prime, stories that the elders tried to suppress, stories about an outcast who escaped." Felt her heart clench. She knew that look. She knew that desperation. She had worn it herself for years. "Come inside," she said. Entered slowly, her eyes taking in the apartment. The comfortable furniture, the books and the photographs of Daniel, and together, smiling, happy. She stared at those photographs longest of all. "They said you were living in shame," whispered. "They said the human had abandoned you. They said you had nothing." "They lied." Daniel appeared in the doorway to his office. He took in the situation with a quick glance and his expression softened. "Hi there, I'm Daniel. Can I get you something to drink? You look like you've had a long journey." Flinched at his direct attention, then slowly nodded. "Water, please, if it's not too much trouble." While Daniel went to get the water, guided to a seat. "Tell me why you're really here." His composure cracked. Tears began sliding down her silver cheeks. "I am like you, barren, diagnosed 6 months ago. My betrothed ended our engagement, my family. They still speak to me, but they look at me differently now, like I'm already dead." "I understand." "I thought about the ritual death, the honorable ending. It's what barren females are supposed to do when the shame becomes too great. I had the ceremony planned. I had the date chosen. And then I heard about you." Daniel returned with the water and handed it to gently. She took it with shaking hands. "What did you hear?" asked. "That you refused to die, that you refused to be ashamed, that you found someone who loved you anyway. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was just a story people told to give false hope, but I kept hearing more details. Your name, this station, and I thought maybe if I found you I could understand how you survived, how you stopped believing you were worthless." Reached out and took his hand. The young woman's fingers were cold and trembling. "It took years," said honestly. "And I had help. A lot of help from someone who refused to see me the way our people saw me. But the first step was choosing to believe that I deserved to live, that I deserved to be happy, that the judgment of our culture was wrong, not something broken inside me." "How do you believe that, when everyone you've ever known tells you the opposite?" Daniel sat down nearby, his presence calm and steady. "Sometimes you need outside perspective. Your culture taught you one thing, but the galaxy is big, and there are a lot of different ways to see the world." Looked at him with confusion. "You truly love her, even knowing she can never give you children." "I truly love her, and children were never something I needed from her. I needed her, just her, everything she is. That's enough. That's more than enough." "I don't understand." "You don't have to understand it yet. You just have to be open to the possibility that it's true." Squeezed hand. "Stay with us for a while. There's a spare room. You can rest, recover, and see what a different kind of life looks like. You don't have to make any decisions right now." "You would do that. You don't even know me." "I know exactly who you are. You're who I was 5 years ago, lost and hopeless and convinced there was no other way. I wish someone had shown me then that there were other paths. I can be that person for you now." His tears fell harder, but something in her expression began to shift. The rigid despair started to crack, and beneath it, Something fragile and new began to emerge. She stayed. Days turned into weeks, slept in the spare room, and slowly began to emerge from her shell. She watched Daniel and with constant fascination, studying their interactions like someone trying to learn a foreign language. She saw Daniel bring coffee in the morning without being asked. She saw edit Daniel's business correspondence when his grammar got sloppy from exhaustion. She saw them argue about small things and resolve those arguments with conversation instead of silence or cruelty. She saw them laugh together at jokes she did not understand. Most of all, she saw that condition was simply one fact among many. Daniel did not treat her as damaged goods he had settled for. He treated her as his partner, his equal, the person he had chosen above all others. One evening, found alone on the apartment's small balcony, looking out at the stars. "I was wrong," said quietly, "about everything I believed." Turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "I believed that my value came from what I could produce, that without children I had nothing to offer, that I was taking up space that should go to someone more worthy." His voice shook, but she continued. "I watched you and Daniel and I saw something I never believed was possible. Love that asks nothing in return. Partnership based on who someone is, not what they can provide. I didn't know such things existed." "They exist, not everywhere, not in every culture, but they exist." "I don't want to die anymore." The words came out in a rush as if had been holding them back for a long time. "I want to find out who I can become. I want to build a life that isn't defined by what I cannot do. I want—" She struggled for words. "I want what you have, not Daniel specifically, but someone who sees me, really sees me." Pulled her into an embrace. "Then you'll find it. It might take time. It might be hard, but you'll find it." Cried against her shoulder, and these tears were different from the ones she had shed when she arrived. These were tears of release, tears of hope, tears of someone beginning to believe that she might have a future worth living. Daniel found them there later, still holding each other on the balcony. He said nothing, just smiled and went to make tea for all three of them. Stayed for 3 more months. When she finally left, she went to a human colony world where had helped her find work and educational opportunities. She was still scared, still uncertain, but she was alive. She was choosing to live. And knew, as she watched ship depart, that this was only the beginning. There would be others, other broken women who had been told they were worthless, other outcasts searching for proof that another way existed. She would be ready for them. 5 years had passed since Daniel Carter sat down at a lonely woman's table in a crowded cafeteria. 5 years since he looked at and saw a person worth knowing instead of an outcast to be avoided. 5 years since everything began to change. Their apartment on Haven's Rest Station had become a quiet legend among outcasts. 7 barren women had passed through their doors over the years. Some stayed for weeks, some for months. All of them left with something they had not possessed when they arrived. Hope, direction, the beginning of belief that they deserved lives of their own choosing. Had completed her degree and published 3 research papers on cross-cultural concepts of family and individual worth. Her work examined how different species define value, how those definitions shape societies, and how individuals caught between cultural expectations and personal reality navigated their choices. Academic journals had taken notice. Invitations to contribute to larger studies had begun arriving. Daniel's shipping company had grown to 12 pilots serving routes across 2 sectors. He still flew his own routes sometimes, unwilling to give up the stars entirely, but most of his time went to management and planning. They had built something together, something neither of them could have built alone. The message from Prime arrived on an ordinary morning. Read it 3 times before showing it to Daniel. The seal belonged to the High Council itself, the governing body of the entire civilization. The language was formal, neutral, and carefully worded. "They want me to come to station," she said, "for a formal meeting." Daniel looked up from his breakfast. "What kind of meeting?" "It doesn't say. only that my presence is requested and that the council wishes to discuss matters of cultural significance. Could be a trap. Perhaps, but I don't think so. Set the message down. Something is changing on Prime. I've heard rumors. Young people questioning old traditions. Debates in academic circles about the treatment of barren females. My research has been cited in some of those debates. Your research? Apparently, my papers have been passed around despite efforts to suppress them. The ideas are spreading. Daniel was quiet for a moment thinking. Then he said, "We should go together." You would return to, after how they treated you. I would go anywhere with you. Besides, I'm curious to see their faces when they realize they couldn't push us out of existence. They traveled to station together, arriving 5 days after receiving the summons. The station looked the same as remembered, busy and crowded and indifferent to individual stories. But when she walked through its corridors, she noticed something different in the way people looked at her. Some still turned away. Old habits died slowly, but others watched her with something other than disgust, curiosity, interest, even respect. The council meeting took place in a formal chamber near the station's administrative center. 5 elders sat behind a curved table, their silver faces neutral and unreadable. Recognized among them, the same elder who had once warned Daniel away from her. She stood before them with Daniel at her side, refusing to show fear. The lead, an ancient female named, spoke first. "Thank you for answering our summons. I was not aware I had a choice." "You always have a choice. That is, in fact, why we asked you here," folded her hands. "Your research has caused considerable disruption on Prime. Your papers argue that our traditional treatment of barren females is not only harmful but based on outdated assumptions about value and contribution." That is correct. You have also become something of a symbol among younger generations, the outcast who found happiness, the barren woman who built a meaningful life despite everything our culture tried to do to her. Its expression remained neutral. Some see you as an inspiration, others see you as a threat to our way of life. "And which do you see me as?" Spoke then, his voice quieter than remembered. "I see you as someone who forced me to question beliefs I held for 300 years. That is not a comfortable experience, but I am coming to believe it was a necessary one." Stared at him. This was not what she had expected. Continued. "The council has been debating reforms for 2 years now. The pressure from younger generations has become impossible to ignore. Your work has provided intellectual foundation for arguments that were previously dismissed as emotional or unrealistic." "What kind of reforms?" "We propose ending the formal ostracism of barren females. We propose establishing support programs to help them find meaningful roles in society. We propose allowing them full participation in education, career advancement, and community life." Paused. "These changes will not happen overnight. There is significant resistance from traditional factions, but we believe the direction is irreversible." Felt Daniel's hand close around hers, steadying her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we want your involvement. You understand both worlds now. You know what it is to be an outcast, and you know what it is to build a life beyond our culture's expectations. Your perspective would be valuable in designing and implementing these programs. You want me to consult for the council that once declared me worthless." "Yes," met her eyes directly. "We treated you unjustly. Our entire civilization treated you unjustly. We cannot undo that harm, but we can try to prevent it from happening to future generations. Will you help us?" Was silent for a long moment. She thought about all the years of loneliness, the shame, the nights she had wondered if dying would be easier than continuing to exist in a world that saw her as nothing. She thought about and the others who had come to her door, broken and desperate, searching for proof that survival was possible. She thought about Daniel, standing beside her, holding her hand. "I will help," she said finally. "Not for the council, Not for Prime. For every woman who was ever told she was worthless because of something she could not control. For everyone who is still suffering under traditions that should have died centuries ago. Nodded slowly. That is acceptable. The meeting concluded with formal agreements and schedules for future communications. When they finally left the chamber, felt strange. Lighter somehow, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had suddenly lifted. Daniel walked beside her through the station corridors. How do you feel? I'm not sure, vindicated perhaps, sad that it took so long, hopeful that things might actually change. Do you regret anything? All the trouble, the lost years, choosing me over your family. Stopped walking and turned to face him. They stood in the middle of a busy corridor, people flowing around them, and she did not care who watched. I regret nothing, she said. You showed me that I was worth loving. You stayed when everyone else left. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Every good thing in my life exists because you sat down at my table that first night and treated me like a person worth knowing. Daniel smiled, the same warm smile he had given her 5 years ago. I didn't choose trouble when I chose you. I just chose you. Everything else was just weather. She laughed and pulled him close, holding him in the middle of the crowded station. Around them, watched. Some with old prejudice, some with new curiosity, some with something that might have been envy for what she had found. A young barren female passed them, her head down, her posture showing the familiar weight of shame. She glanced at Daniel and at their embrace, at the obvious love between them. She did not look away in disgust. She watched with something like hope. Saw her looking and smiled. It was an invitation, a promise, proof that another way was possible. The young woman hesitated. Then slowly, she straightened her spine just a little bit. She lifted her head just a little bit. She continued walking, but her steps seemed lighter than before. Change was slow, it always was, but it had begun and nothing could stop it now. Daniel and walked through the station together, hand in hand, no longer outsiders in a world that had once rejected them. They had proven something that no council decree could match. Love, real love, saw past the judgments that societies placed on people. It saw the person underneath. And sometimes, one person's stubborn refusal to accept cruelty as normal could change everything. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not military power, just the simple, revolutionary belief that every person had worth, regardless of what they could or could not provide. And sometimes, that belief was enough to change the universe.